Welcome. You are tuned to NYC Radio Live. My name is David Ellenbogen. I am so glad that you're here with me. It's a real honor. And speaking of honors, well, two things. I never mentioned this before, but this track underneath, this was recorded live on this very show by the Mandingo Ambassadors, and I've been using it as the theme for a couple episodes lately, and you can catch them at Barbez every Wednesday. Anyway, the main honor I was going to speak of was I got to hang out with one of the great jazz pianists of our time, Jean-Michel Pilc, and kind of tried a new format, which I hope to continue with, which was we just went to his house, hung out, and discussed while he had his piano in front of him, and he improvised and was generally, I thought, hilarious. He's a really funny guy in a very subtle way. I love this point he made about, you don't want your music. You want to get out there. You don't want to feel that your art has been ignored by the entirety of humanity, which I love. I think we can all relate to that sentiment. Before we jump into that great interview, I want to let you know that after 17 years of cranking away interviewing great musicians, or I don't know, I was on the radio for 17 years, but a bunch of years interviewing great musicians, I've come out with a book interviewing with three of my favorite interviews of all that time, and it's with the spirit medium Mbira player Cosmas Magaya and Wasafuddin Dagar, who's a Drupad singer whose family has been keeping that music alive for over 20 generations, and with the man who's best known as John Coltrane's partner in crime, McCoy Tyner, one of the really important jazz pianists in history. And the book is called Music is the Magic of a Secret World, and I'm making it available for free download for all of you on the website nycradiolive.org. But if you feel like paying something and donating a little to the cause, you can pay what you want, and there's some options there. And I want to just quickly thank those people who did buy a copy. Karen and Umer and Carolyn and Hatim and Marlene and Raul and Scott. Many thanks to them, and to everybody else who's so far just taken free ones. I mean, in this world crowded with information, it's an honor that anybody's checking anything out. So thanks to them and to you, and let's go to the Brooklyn home of the great jazz pianist Jean-Michel Pilc. You're listening to WKCR 89.9 FM New York. My name is David Ellenbogen, and I'm thrilled to be in the home of Jean-Michel Pilc. He's here. We set up some microphones, and thanks for doing this. This is really exciting.
Well, it's very exciting for me too. It's the best place to do something like this is your own home, your own piano. So I'm very thrilled.
Okay, well maybe you got some music in you. You feel
Yeah,
like starting off with something.
yeah. Let's play. It's early in the morning, so let's call it a morning tune. It will be something that I like to do when I wake up. Maybe not exactly when I wake up, but in the morning, at the beginning of my days, I just like to improvise freely and see what happens. That's something I've been doing last 40 years of my life. So let's do it.
So, do you have any compositions that came out of these morning improvisations?
Well, that's something I do actually on a regular basis. Is I improvise and I record myself. Not all the time, because if you record yourself all the time, you lose that sense of improvisation. That just it's out in the air and you will never be able to do it again. If you record it, you always have that feeling that it's not gonna go away. It's on the spot.
Right.
So now when I'm improvising, I know even though I'm trying not to think about it, I know I'm being recorded. So maybe, or certainly, I'm improvising slightly differently. But it does happen, that I feel like, I feel kind of inspired today. So let's put a recording machine in the piano and just improvise. And many of I would say quite a few of my recent tunes were born like that. They were just, that improvisation was cool. I want to play it again, and that becomes a tune. And that, and sometimes walking in the street and having a melodic idea or rhythmic idea or both. Those are my favorite way of composing, away from calculation. It's just spontaneous, natural, organic, musical process.
Do you have one that jumps out at you that came in this way?
Yeah, I remember a long time ago I was with some guys, French guys, that was back in maybe 1990 or something like that, and I started like a slow blues in E that goes like this. etc. So I remember that I played it actually on a keyboard. It was not even on a piano. It was a kind of a old Korg M1 at the time. That was a really very popular synthesizer, a very great synthesizer. And so I put that sound that was like voices. It was like whoa, 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 whoa. It sounded like chorus or a choral thing. And I was very inspired. I love actually playing keyboard, even though I haven't done it much lately. Maybe I'll do it more in the future. But I was very inspired. I felt like almost like it was a choral singing it. So I just improvised that thing. And actually, when we listened to it, I was like, that's great, and I've been playing it consistently over the years until now. I'm still playing it quite often. It's called Golden Key. I even have a great singer named Elizabeth Contomano who put words on it, and it's in her album that was recorded 20 years ago now. So it's, that's a good example of an improvisation that became a tune, for sure.
Yeah, and when you started out, were there particular pianists that you were just totally imitating, kind of?
Yeah, of course. I think, for me at the beginning, it was not even about the piano. It was actually, really, I was listening to, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was listening to, my uncles were very musical. My mom especially was very musical. She was a great singer. My grandmother. We had lots of music lovers in the family, even though we didn't have professional musicians, per se. And so at the age of 4 or 5, I was exposed to, Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Chopin and Django Reinhardt and Louis Armstrong and Big Spider Baker. And for me, it was all the same. What I mean by that is that I didn't make any difference. For me, great music was great music. I was a kid of 5, and each time I heard something that I loved, it was just something that I loved. And I have to admit now that I am the same now at the age of 54 as I was. I'm going to turn 54 on Sunday, so it's coming fast. October 19th. So I was the same. I am the same now as I was. And so that's why sometimes I'm so surprised at the politicization and labelization or labeling or labeling, I don't know.
Categorization.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really very allergic to that because I think it goes contrary to the way I discovered music and I learned how to love it, And I didn't learn how to love it, I just loved it, period. But it goes contrary to everything about me that loves music.
So if you were to take a Django Reinhardt idea and put it on the piano.
Yeah, like a Reinhardt voice. Well, I'm not going to try to play stride because that's something I haven't done in a long time. I could do it slowly. And Django takes a solo, like crazy solo on this, like start like something like that's with that repeated note, and I was like, man, this guy is crazy. I love that because, and my uncles listened to that like 10 times a day, and they were like shouting and stuff, and I was like, this is pure adrenaline, it drives you nuts, There's stuff like that, that people don't dare do anymore because they're trying to do complicated scales and I don't know what. But that was like completely, it was primal. It like just hit me in the chest, And that's something I discovered about music really, really early. That the physicality of it, how physical it is. And that's why now I am so sometimes, I don't know the word, but astonished at some of my students because they kind of discovered music in a way that's so intellectual. And sometimes I realize that they don't know about that physicality of music, that they don't have much experience of it. And I'm like, how could you? That's how you learn how to love music, is through the physical side of it. When I was 5 and I heard that Django Reinhardt thing, it really hit me in the chest. It was a real, almost painful thing. I was like, couldn't breathe. It's like getting hit by a boxer or something. And so sometimes they're like, yeah, which kind of scale do you play on this chord? And I'm like, have you ever been hit in the chest by Django Reinhardt? No, so let's start there, and I bring them back to that because I think that's to me the starting point of music is there, physicality, sensuality.
Hmm.
It's a sexual thing, I think.
Lower chakras.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe, I don't know. What can you give an example? Maybe another physical musician, like a musical example of a real physical. Like I'm thinking Count Basie is a real physical.
Like, see when he repeats that kind of stuff, like sometimes sometimes it's just gonna do like just that, and it puts you in a trance. It's like acupuncture, putting a needle in the right place. And of course, then I discovered Errol Garner, talk about a physical musician, like when he was playing, I don't know. See, okay, I used to do it even better because I was such a fan. But when he does like it's in four. And he goes soft like that suddenly, and he swings like that. It stops you from breathing. You're like, oh wow, it gets your breathing. There's really something extremely intense about it. And that's something that's funny that it's achieved with pretty simple means. And people say, swing is this, swing is that. Everybody has an idea what the definition of swing is. But the thing that if you listen to Errol Garner, he plays straight eights. He's going to play that. His phrasing is almost like Bach, and it swings like crazy. Because because of what I don't know, by definition now, because I don't know what swing is. I am not as intelligent as some of my colleagues, but what I know that it swings incredibly, and he plays like straight eight stuff, And so you're like, how come it swings? Because I thought swings was supposed to be triplet feel. People think that's what swing is. No, nobody knows what swing is. Like love, you don't know what love is. So I think that also taught me something, that if I wanted to play this music, I had to listen to all those guys and understand what they were doing from a physical point of view, not from a theoretical or intellectual or I don't know point of view, abstract. I had to actually play like them. So I did imitate all those guys, with different degrees of success, Some Errol Garner I used to imitate almost perfectly. Now it's not exactly, I've been doing it in a long time, and I didn't rehearse my Errol Garner for this show. So, but it's still in me, It's not very important that I don't play like him exactly. What's important is that it's in me, that physical thing that he expresses when he plays is part of my makeup, of my musical makeup, So I think that's the important thing to me.
And I think when you're talking about the sound waves hitting you in the chest, I'm thinking right away of the way Monk would plunk two notes next to each other.
playing of Monk, which I'm imperfectly imitating here. I'm not even trying to imitate him. I'm just trying to get the spirit of it. There's a lot of Basie. There's a lot of Errol Garner. There's a lot of those guys. Because Monk started, he was a stride pianist.
Right.
He was like very influenced at the time by people like Teddy Wilson, for example, another fantastic pianist. And so Monk has that thing, that tradition in him of stride piano, of Basie, of those guys, And there is this incredible video where he plays, I believe it's Blue Monk, I think, and Count Basie is sitting near the piano and watches Monk.
Mm.
So, and you see Monk playing, sweating, super focused, and he tapping his foot, where that's insane that actually the camera shows you his foot. And it's funny to see that video because you can really Monk is like a Count Basie gone mad, a little bit, and there is this really this relationship between the two, and I think that's something that people don't understand very often when it comes to Monk, is that Monk is all about swing and blues and melody. It's not like only the strange harmonies, it's not only that, it's also the melodic thing, that's what it is. It's with that's incredible. Monk writes a blues with a major seventh in it. Toward the end. The beginning. And so that's the type of melodic idea that Monk had that was pure genius. It's like, I'm going to write a blues, but it's going to be a major seven. Of course, he didn't think like that. He was not sitting at the piano saying, I'm going to put a major seven. It just came to him, It just came to him like all the greatest improvisers. Music came to him naturally, And I'm sure many of Monk tunes were actually improvisation. He was sitting at the piano having an idea and boom, it became a tune. And so that's something that people tend to not understand sometimes about Monk, is the root that he has, very, very deeply in more traditional jazz. And he was, of course, as I think many people know, very influenced by Duke Ellington, for instance.
Right. And he's another one whose swing is not the conventional swing.
Oh yeah, some people hate it. I mean, somebody like Miles didn't really like it. He expressed it once in an interview, It was like, I don't know what he said exactly, but he was, it's not for everybody.
Right.
Obviously. It's not for everybody, sometime... I don't remember how to imitate Monk. I haven't done it in a long time, so I'm not going to try that. But there is something that could sound... Yeah, I mean, the first time I heard Monk, very honestly, it sounded kind of stiff and rigid to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, that guy is kind of like, didn't practice enough or something. There's something almost like rigid about it, like something stiff, And it's like the first time you see a painting by Picasso, and you're like, what the hell is that, It doesn't... I mean, the first time I saw a painting of Picasso with the eyes not being in the right place, I was like, this is ugly.
Right.
This guy is just out of his mind. How come he's so famous? And then you discover, sometimes you need to learn a little bit, about the art. And so I think Monk, after a while, I started warming up to his playing, and it started making sense to me more and more. And there still are some stuff from Monk that I like better than some others.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like, that's what it is. It's like Picasso. It's like something that, some people can dislike, and they are very much entitled to. But it's something completely unique and particular, and there's nothing even remotely like it in the history of music. So for that only, I think it's a fantastic thing,
And also, you can swing by having tension against everybody else who's swinging, right?
That's the thing that sometimes I tell my students, you can swing with one note. For example, if I do, I'm not swinging. But if I do, I'm swinging. So what's the difference? I mean, what's the difference? You know, of course, if I do 3 notes, it's even easier. If I do, I'm not swinging. But if I do, see, I'm not. It's not very much different. But there is. It's a little bit. It's like language. You know, I always try to teach music like a language. So, for example, I speak English very well, but with an accent. I have a French accent. I know. I will never lose it. I mean, I was about to say, unfortunately. No, well, that's who I am. But I mean, some people in America speak with an accent that's much bigger than mine, much, you know, in the South or Midwest or whatever. But you can hear they're American. Mm-hmm. You know, you can say, okay, well, they're from Dallas or Chicago or whatever, but, you know, you can hear they're American. Somebody who hears me knows I'm not American, knows I was born somewhere else. Some people don't recognize the French accent because I don't speak like that. I make an effort to speak decent English, but it's there. There is an accent that's not indigenous or something, you know, and you can hear it. I think that's the same with swing. That you can speak tons of different ways, really, and swing. Monk swings, Basie swings, Eric Garner swings, Ahmad Jamal swings, Bill Evans swings, Keith Jarrett swings, Herbie swings. McCoy swings. I can continue like that just with pianist, and then we can start with sax players and do the same, and you will see that nobody articulates the same, nobody swings the same, nobody speaks the same. You know, if you compare, like, I don't know, like people as extreme as Lester Young and Coltrane, it's very extraordinary different type of articulation, you know, but both swing. So when people ask me what is swing, I'm like, that's absolutely impossible. It's a question that's impossible to answer, because look at 2 different players, and you will have it will be so different. It's you cannot pinpoint one thing. You know, it's just, but they speak the right language, like people who speak English the right way. And then you hear a classical player trying to play jazz. It happens sometimes, you know, and you hear, no, man, that's not right. Pop singer, you know, some pops, not all of them, but some can do it, some cannot. And when you hear some of them trying to play jazz and it sounds wrong, it sounds out of place, and you're like, yeah, that's, you know, me trying to read Shakespeare, you know. So that's how it is. It's very difficult to theorize, but I can definitely hear it.
Well, let's talk about the kind of the classical players that kind of work their way into your sound. I mean, Debussy, I would imagine, is somebody who...
I mean, I was not too much into 20th century music, even though Debussy was a little bit before that, but he was kind of both 19th and 20th century. But the thing that really, in terms of classical music, that really I discovered very young was people more like romantic, like Beethoven, for sure, Chopin. I would say Beethoven and Chopin probably. Tchaikovsky, my uncles loved, you know, Nutcracker, Swan Lake and stuff like that. I discovered Gershwin very young. That was 20th century music, but it's already a little bit different, of course. So I discovered like more modern composers later. I would say Ravel, Debussy, Scriabin, Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev, all those guys that I love now, I discovered when I was probably in my late teens, you know. So, but all those people, of course, were, big influences. I mean, the first time I heard Prokofiev, I was like, wow, it's incredible. It sounds normal, except there are some wrong notes, you know. Like, but those wrong notes are so incredibly good, you know. And then it opened my ear, and then, you know, later I heard Rite of Spring, of course, and I really, it really expanded my horizon. But at the beginning, it was more like people like Beethoven and Chopin and Schubert, more that romantic. Even though Chopin hated being called romantic, he didn't think his music was romantic at all, which is kind of true. But there was something about Chopin in particular that really, I think, is still one of the most incredible influences on me. I always felt his music was one of the most incredibly moving, perfect, and deep musics I've ever heard.
Do you have any of those pieces in your...
Yeah, I could play you a Chopin Valse if you'd like.
Of course.
Might be a couple of wrong notes, but I can always try. Chopin that I really admire is that you feel that every note is felt at the deepest, like at the deepest level. That's something that struck me when I heard his valses, and all the critics are like, yeah, it's a minor work. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? First, who are you to say that? And second, what does that mean? What is the meaning of it's a minor work? Yeah, it's minor. Obviously that's F minor, so it's minor. But people are so arrogant with all their classification, and I'm like, if I play this valse, I mean, I'm sure I didn't play it perfectly, but it's a perfect work. It's like perfection. Nothing, like they say in Amadeus in the play, change one note and there would be diminishment. Chopin is a bit like Mozart to me, like you cannot touch a note, and he was a big admirer of Bach. He was the only composer. Bach was the only composer that Chopin never said anything bad about, because he was kind of a bad mouth.
He has opinions.
Yeah, normal. That's another thing that's
Right.
forbidden these days, but at the time people just spoke their mind, which I love. And he said some really outrageous things, but let's not go there. So anyway, Beethoven was pretty bad too. So when Chopin wrote, everything was completely felt at the deeper. And the other thing that impressed me, maybe a little bit later, was that basically he invented modern harmony. I mean, when you listen to Beethoven or Schubert, as incredible as it is, God knows I love Schubert and Beethoven. Beethoven is, I'm not saying anything particular by saying that he's probably, one of the greatest monuments in all of the history of music. But it sounds like more classical. Let's put it. Some of Chopin sounds like Bill Evans.
Maybe can you illustrate what you mean for people?
Let me think of maybe something like what could I play? Maybe, for example, that very famous etude. Kind of chromatic stuff and sus4 and shit like that and stuff like that. Well, on the radio, I should remember. It's really like the beginning of modern harmony. It's really something that you didn't hear before, and it's done in a way that's so perfect that you're like, where does it come from? Because you have example of that in Beethoven already, but it's not like the whole vocabulary of Chopin is completely original and comes from nowhere. To me, it's really like somebody who's actually underrated in a way. So, and that one of his etudes does this. I cannot really play it anymore, but the phrase is. Let's see if I play it slowly. Wow, what was that? You have nothing equivalent in Schubert, Beethoven, or even Schumann, or and Schumann adds those things. That's definitely the beginning of those modern harmony stuff. But Chopin really built his old work on that completely original and unheard before colors. And that's not a coincidence if people like Debussy and Ravel were extraordinary, big admirers of Chopin, because they heard that. They heard that he was the precursor and all that work about opening the harmony. He was definitely, I think, the precursor of that. If not the first one.
What I've heard about Debussy is that they were exposed to the music of Bali, like a gamelan came through France in the World's Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So he had that abstract harmonies, or these sus things, and coming from Chopin, but also he got into some weird time things that they were exploring in Indonesia.
That the first thing that Ravel published, it's called Menuet Antique. He wrote it when he was 19. The first chord is this. So it's like, wow, it's like Monk almost. There's something like almost, I'm going to start with a chord that nobody has done before, and then the whole thing progresses, and it sounds like sometimes it sounds like Prokofiev and Rachmaninoff. There was lots of anticipation of that, and it was written way before. So those guys had really a vision of opening the music. I think in two different ways, because Ravel was much more of a classicist. He liked to use classical forms and stuff and do something special with them, which he did. That's pretty much every time he wrote anything. Debussy was, I think, a different type of personality. They're too often confused. They're very, very different. But both definitely, opened the musical field like crazy. But everybody say, the French composer. I'm like, no, because at the time you had people like Scriabin or Mussorgsky and people like that. Scriabin especially, and then Rachmaninoff, that were doing stuff that was not so different. Stravinsky, of course, except that Stravinsky was maybe more less of a piano guy than the other ones. But there was really this opening of harmony, and I have to repeat that. I think a lot of it came from Chopin, from his ideas.
And when I think of great bass players, I think of
a great pianist has to be a great bass player. Because, Ray Brown said something really true. I'm sure I'm going to misquote him a bit because I can't remember exactly. But he said something to the effect of, you have the melody and you have the bass. The rest is feeling. It's true. I also tell, people, my students, I'm like, it's like a bookshelf. You have the rhythm, that's where the book are, rest on the bookshelf. And then you have two bookends. On the right bookend is the melody, and the left bookend is the bass. Because everybody is so obsessed by harmony and chord progression, You have lots of people who have been trained through the real book, which is insane, and they live in a harmonic jail. I'm like, no, you're not. Forget about harmony for a moment and just think of, I want you to be able to do. All the things you are, I want them to be able to play a melody and a bass and that both make sense. Before they do like you know. Because they get to there, and that's what they preoccupy them is what are the smartest, cleverest, most impressive chords I can come up with. And I'm like, yeah, but if you don't hear a simple bass and a melody together against each other with the right swing, if you don't hear that, there's no need starting to put colors on your canvas. You have to draw first. So we work a lot on that. And to me, bass player, I always also tell my students, transcribe bass lines. Go to Kind of Blue. I know many people talk about it these days for some reason, but go to Kind of Blue and transcribe what Paul Chamber does. Everybody transcribes Miles, Coltrane, Cannonball, Bill Evans. Transcribe what Paul Chamber does. Because if you don't hear it, you're not hearing the music. People very often, hear only the right side of the music, if I may say. So they're like, playing like all kind of like nonsense on the right hand, and the left hand is doing pretty much nothing. I'm like, no. I mean, it's actually more important what's happening on the bass. If the bass is inspiring, then your right hand, or whatever is playing the melody, is going to be inspired to do something musical. See, if I do beginning of all the things you are again. Inspires me. That's my ground. That's the ground on which I'm working. If that ground is shaky, which happens sometimes, when you improvise, then it's like I'm falling in a hole. I'm like, oh shit. So I have to recover, but it's pretty much always because the bass is not right. Well, at left hand I can always, everybody's very impressed by that type of thing, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't play a note of music here. I just bullshitted my way through the whole thing by just playing fast, and that's easy to do. That's not difficult. What's more difficult is to do something like this, for example. So here, I have this idea. I don't know if you could call it a decision. I don't like that word because I don't think improvisation is something you decide. I think it comes out of you. But I heard that note. It's a B. It's a B natural. And suddenly I was hearing the melody of all the things you are on that B natural. Why? I don't know. There's no why. It's like the universe. So it's there. So. Etc. That's the idea. And I figured, and again, it's not conscious. I want to stay there. I don't want to move from there. That's also the mistake that jazz musicians, including me, do a lot. Is sometimes you're in the middle of an idea and you're like, oh, that's boring. I'm gonna go somewhere else. Sometimes no, don't go anywhere. Let the music decide. So I was feeling good with that beat, and that's the bass player.
Right.
And it's not enough to play a beat, it has to groove too, because many people also, when they do those kind of things, they forget about the groove. And you don't hear the rhythm, and to me it's like swimming in a river that has no current, So I want to swim in a river that has current to carry me, and that current is going to be the rhythm, the groove. And it's provided in that case by the bass player, by that B, that guy playing a B, wow, that's a great sound, And from there, the music almost plays itself, you see, because of the bass, So now, of course, I'm using voicings and harmonies and stuff, but in a way, those are colors that I see thanks to this bass, thanks to this bass melody. It's a one-note melody, but it's still a melody with this rhythm, And then I have the current, and I just have to swim through the current, Of course, that's kind of some practice behind that, but I think mainly the bass is what's providing the inspiration, in many tunes, in most tunes.
And when you're playing these kind of splashes of color that you did towards the end with the right hand,
right?
Is that something that are you thinking like you can hear every single one of those notes before you play it, or is it just, or is it, how does that work?
Yes and no. I don't know how that works.
Right.
I'm going to disappoint you right away. I don't know. But no, what I know is that...
Maybe that's a relief.
Yeah. That's what Glenn Gould says. If you ask the caterpillar to think about the movement of each of his legs, it's not going to move.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It can't... He won't be able to move. It won't be able to move, to walk. That's something that Glenn Gould talked about, is when you think of things and you cannot do them anymore. Mm-hmm. So he did something crazy, like he practiced back and he put a vacuum cleaner near the piano as loud as possible, so that he couldn't hear himself, and he said, that way I don't think anymore, and I can play. Sometime when you had to play, it was a bit strange, of course, but that's a good point. So sometime when my left hand is blocked, I think about my right hand and then unblock the left, because I'm not thinking about it anymore. But I would say, when I play the thing, I would say, I hear them. I could whistle them at the same time. I do that. Sometime on stage, I play the piano and whistle. So let's do another tune, because I'm going to get sick and tired of all the things you are. But if I do, for example, Autumn Leaves. So as you can see, I can whistle and play at the same time, and it's kind of unison.
Right.
It's not always perfectly unison, but it's close. So I feel like, yes, I can hear every one of those notes, because if I couldn't hear them, I couldn't whistle them.
Right.
So, but the thing is that it's not like I hear them consciously, like, oh, I'm gonna play an A, and
Right.
it's like a flow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's like a river, you know. When you're in a river, you don't see all the molecules of water,
Right.
but you feel the water around you. That's, I think, is a good comparison. And you see, when I'm whistling and playing the piano at the same time as a compass, you know, as a I'm not thinking of every note that I'm playing on the piano because I'm whistling, you know. So to me, it's kind of another guy that's playing the piano at that moment. And you can hear, I think, the importance of the bass, how the bass actually makes the whole thing work. You know, if the bass is not there, I won't be able to do it. I won't be inspired as a soloist to whistle or sing or whatever, you know. So that's the important thing. And I always tell my students another thing is that you should be able to play the instrument and sing. You should be able to. To me, that's really a fluency test, as I call it.
Mm-hmm.
If I can improvise something that sounds like something, of course, if I do. No. But if I do something that sounds like something on top of playing the piano, that's a fluency test to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's how can you speak and do something in the same time. If you're fluent in a language, you can speak while you're preparing coffee or something, you know.
Right.
So it's a fluency thing. Or can you do like. Can you sing, play a bass, and tap a rhythm? I think those are really what I call my fluency test. I'm like, can you actually tap a rhythm and just talk without screwing up the rhythm? Most students, as soon as they start talking, that's what happens. I'm like, no. Your rhythm is your heartbeat. It shouldn't disappear when you talk. It should be, that's what I call internalization. Music should be something internal. It shouldn't be something intellectual that you have to think about, you know. And I call it, you know, I call it creative multitasking, or, you know, it has some analogies with computers, you know, but I feel like that to me is the way that to make music, because at the end, if you have that internalization taking place, at the moment that you play, you hear yourself as though you are not playing. That was something I discovered when I was in my 30s. Is I improvised a lot at home, but I never really recorded myself. It was more difficult than now. You didn't have those Zooms and stuff like that. But one day I actually bought a mini cassette at the time or something, you know, and I started recording myself, and I was pretty much horrified by the difference between what I thought I had played and what it sounded like 2 days later. And I was like, I thought it was good and I hate it. Well, how come? And I realized that I was not hearing myself when I was playing. I was just typewriting.
Mm.
You know, like. And you're like, oh man, this is genius. And then you listen to it 2 days later and you're like, no, there's nothing in it. I was just not listening. I was just not hearing. I was not even hearing the sound of the instrument. So by recording myself, I learned how to be a listener of myself. And that in return made me understand the importance of internalization, of being available to hear the music. You have to express that music naturally without having to think about it.
And how does one develop that?
Time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm asking myself this question every morning. Sometimes I sit at the piano and I suck, and I'm like, why?
Right.
You know, I'm not like, oh, I'm so happy about myself now. No, that's not true. Sometimes I wake up, I play, and I'm like, how come I can't hear anything?
Mm.
You have to go back to on a regular basis. You have to go back to the laboratory, to the drawing table, and rediscover the music. It's a question which doesn't have an answer. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was about to say thanks God, even though I'm not quite a typical believer, but I would say the mystery. That's the mystery keeps you on your toes. If there was no mystery anymore, if you had an answer to that question, then it would be the end of the beautiful quest, I believe.
But I feel that hard work or consistent work will probably make those kind of peak experiences more likely.
It's true, absolutely. You're right. I mean, you know, yeah. I used to be a hard worker, a little bit less since I have kids, but for time reasons, and you know. But I felt like when I was in my 30s, I had this very, I would say, very rigorous work routine. You know, technique and classical music a lot, and trying to improvise on standards with a nice bass line and a nice melody, like I played before. Different keys. Stuff like that, which I don't do remotely enough these days. But sometimes I do it for my students, so I practice for them. That's good. But I had a very rigorous work routine. There are two things that it does. It elevates your lower level, if I may say. So when you're not good, you're still okay.
Right.
And it gives you much more consistency, which means the difference between the good and the bad becomes less. You know what I'm saying? It also relaxes you because you get more confident. It gives you ideas. Technique gives ideas. That's what Martial Solal said once to me. And that's a very beautiful sentence. It's very true. It also makes you play at a lower percentage of your abilities. When I play and I'm satisfied, I'm often like 50%. I can talk, I can look around, I like to do that. I remember that 20 years ago, my eyes were glued to a key and I was like absorbed by my own playing, and I was at 90%, and I can hear it in the recordings when I hear them now. I'm like, I can hear. I was close to the 100% of my possibility. That doesn't sound as good as when you are at 60%. If you listen to somebody like Art Tatum, that's pretty unbelievable that you hear those supernatural things, and you feel that he's like not even like 50 or 60% of his possibilities, and that's why it sounds so good, and that's why the groove and the swing is there. That's why it sounds so natural, so relaxed, and that's why it's so rewarding to listen to.
You've played with so many great players. I imagine that if when you're playing, you're listening to them, you're in good shape, right? If you're...
It definitely helps. It's... Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sometimes you reach, you're tired, you get to a jazz club, you're almost sleeping already, it's late. And you hear some guy playing the drums and some guy playing the bass in a way that inspires you, and boom, it sends you to another place, to another zone. That's for sure. That has been my issue with solo piano for a long time, is to be able to do that when you play solo.
Right.
I found a kind of a way lately to achieve that. It's a very schizophrenic process, but it's good.
And coming up, you have a new solo piano record coming out. That's coming out in a few weeks.
It's actually coming out end of January or beginning of February. We had to synchronize it with some events. But I can tell you what it's about, and it's actually going to be interesting in relation to what we said before, that it's a set of 30 variations on what is a thing called love. And the standard that you probably know, and by Cole Porter. And that's something I've been doing since years, is, theme and variation. Classical musicians did it all the time. Everybody knows the Goldberg and the Diabelli, Beethoven and Schubert and Mozart, and theme of Brahms, Stravinsky, Rachmaninoff. Lots and lots of musicians, classical musicians, have been there. They take a theme and then they do a set of variations. Every variation is like one form long, two form longs. And of course I forgot Beethoven and his last sonatas. I mentioned the Diabelli. And that's kind of the reverse. That's what jazz musicians usually do. They take a standard and they improvise for like 10 minutes on the same tempo, same harmonies, and this and that.
Right.
So you could call it a variation or variation, but actually that's not what it is. So I can show you maybe a couple of variations on what is this thing called love right now, to show you a little bit what it sounds like. And that's something that I feel is extremely inspiring, because every time you start a new variation, it's like you have to go to another planet. It's really space travel. So I know it's been done already, even though I didn't see it done like that.
Specific.
I know that Dan Tepfer, who actually recorded my album, is not only a fantastic pianist, but also a great engineer when it comes to the piano. Did a Goldberg variation thing, where he played the Goldberg and he made an improvised variation over each variation of the Goldberg.
Wow.
Which is killing, which is a great idea. It's the kind of idea that classical musicians had, when they did those transcription, or when Ravel transcribed stuff for orchestra, or did variation, or like Schoenberg taking Schubert's tune and turning them around, stuff like that. But what I did is different. It's actually more traditional, just taking a theme and making variations out of it. And so it could give something like this. I'm going to start with a theme, and then I will.
thanks for that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. You know, it's always the same when I do it. There are some variations that I'm more satisfied than some others. You know, I mean, there are some that I feel, oh, that's cool, and there are some others I'm like, yeah, that one's, you know. So of course, when I did the recording, I selected the one that I like because you know. But it's true that at some point I did a whole session. It was in a Saturday evening, after a good glass of really good Italian wine, and I recorded an hour non-stop, you know. And that's a big part of the CD because, you know, when you find the story, you know, it guides you. You know, it's incredible. And the thing that the melody, that standard, it's a beautiful song, of course. Cole Porter was one of the best, as we all know. And even sometimes when you don't play it at all, because some variation, you know, I don't even play it, but it's always on my mind. It's a bit like the moon with the tides, you know, you see the tides,
Right.
you don't know what it is, but, you know, science has shown that it's the moon, you know. But you don't see it, you don't see you just, you know, see it indirectly. And for me, that's the beauty of it, that sometimes you do a variation, and the melody is there without being there. You know, you feel it indirectly because it's on my mind without being expressed, you know, clearly or, you know. And then you have the same in the, you know, Beethoven showed the way for that in his last sonatas or in the Diabelli, where he played the melody and some of the variation, you know, you're like, yeah, that's nothing to do with the melody anymore. Actually it does, but it's,
Right.
you know, it's there without being there. And when you reach the moment where you do a variation like that, and it works, it's very gratifying because you feel like this kind of very specific, focused type of inspiration. You know, it's like a laser ray. But it doesn't work every time. Sometimes it just doesn't go through. You know.
It's like a metaphor. It's almost like life itself, right? It's like
Yeah. Oh yeah. You have good days, bad day, good hours, bad hours. You have I think improvisation, you know, that's my problem with all the people who try to theorize it or politicize it or categorize it or rationalize it or whatever they're trying to achieve. I think they're very misguided because I think it's one of the most universal things you can think about. You know, I think human beings improvise all their lives. I mean, we wake up in the morning and we start improvising. I mean, you know, you make your coffee, you improvise, you know, you never do it the same way twice. Sometimes it's better than some others. With me, it's consistently bad, but you know. And then, you know, you improvise. You know pretty much what you're going to do. Even, you know, you have a job, you go to your job, whatever, you go to the studio, or you say, I'm going to practice the piano or the guitar or whatever. But there is a huge part of improvisation at every second. And that's why when I see all this, to me, sorry, in my opinion, nonsense about improvisation, I'm like, guys, stop, you know, stop. You know, you're just damaging the thing, you know, by doing that, you know, by trying to break the mist, by trying to overtalk it, I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. I should shut up. But you know, just let it be. It's life. Don't try to explain life, you know.
Right.
You know, it's like all those self-help books. Try to be a better person, try to be, you know. And I'm like, no, that's not, to me, that's not how it works. Sorry.
I think Emily Dickinson was talking about humor, and she said it's like a frog. You could dissect it, but it dies in the process.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. It's very true. And humor is a very important. I mean, in my music, it's very important. I'm somebody who likes to make jokes, you know. And I'm doing a variation in the record that's dedicated to Martial Solal, this phenomenal French piano player. Has been you know, a real huge inspiration to me. And I'm imitating him, kind of. I'm starting like. And then I'm doing. See all those quotes like Turkish march and stuff like that, and it's one of my favorite variations. Each time I listen to them, I'm like, ooh, because some of them I'm like, yeah, I mean, some of them I like, you know, they're like my babies, but some of them I like better than some others. But that one I'm always thrilled to hear it because it's funny.
Right.
And to me, it's a very, very important part of Charlie Parker's music. It's a very important part of Miles' music. It's a very important part of Errol Garner's, of Louis Armstrong, Dizzy.
Right.
Is their incredible sense of humor, and that's something that I feel music has lost quite a bit these days. People want to be goddamn serious. And I think it's a huge mistake. They're doing the same mistake. That's because your quote, that was very apropos. They're doing the same mistake with humor and that they're just killing it in the process. They're just like damaging something. And I feel like, to me, much of the music, I don't want to sound like an old fart who's criticizing, the youngest guy, because I hear some stuff that's really remarkable, from younger musicians. Believe me, I'm not that kind of guy who thinks, it was better at my time. I hate that type of stupid rhetoric. But I hear very often that young guys tend to be like, they want to be taken seriously. Because, it's difficult.
Right.
You want to make a living, you want somebody to, I wouldn't say a record deal because those times are pretty much over, but, you want to make, you want to, be successful, tour. You want to be a musician. You don't want to stay home and be ignored by the whole of humanity. So you want to be you want to express yourself. Music is communication too. So you want to be taken seriously. You want to be appreciated. And many people, I think, confuse seriousness with quality, and even more, they confuse pretentiousness with depth, which I think is one of the most dramatic confusion that's taking place right now.
Wow. Well, I know we're just, I don't want to put you in a rushing mode, so.
No.
And I know you got a place to go. But you won awards for your whistling, right? You're like
we have another, just so that you can cut it. We have another, I would say 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to do it too long either.
Cool. Okay, I just don't want you to get in a rushing thing.
No.
With wrapping on.
In 20 minutes, I don't think I will be anything to say anymore. I will be totally destroyed.
Let's hear some killing whistling. What's?
Oh. Well, it's difficult these days because the air is very dry and I just got a cold, so my nose is a bit. I'm not going to start the whole complaining shit, but it's an instrument that's very tricky. Sometimes it could. I could do a ballad.
Okay.
I'm going to try and do a. There is this beautiful song by Jacques Brel. He was a Belgian singer who wrote those absolutely amazing songs, and there is one called Ne me quitte pas, Don't Leave Me.
Oh, yes.
That's extremely sad. And I can try to maybe whistle it for you and try to do something with it. We'll see.
quitte pas a mim?
Ne me quitte pas.
Não me quitte pas.
Ne pas oublier qui peut s'oublier, qui se fait déjà oublier les malheurs. It's a beautiful song. It's
Yeah.
very sad. It's terrible.
What does it mean though?
Basically, he's being, dumped by his girlfriend or wife or or boyfriend, could be anything,
Right.
But he's asking her or him or whoever to not to leave him.
Don't quit me.
Don't
basically.
quit me. Don't leave me. Don't quit me. Don't
Yeah.
go away. And he's like, I want to be the shadow of your dog at some point,
I want to be the shadow of your
I want
dog.
to be l'ombre de ta main, the shadow of your hand, the shadow of your dog, the shadow. But don't leave me. Whatever. I'll do whatever you want.
Wow.
But you have to hear the originals. I mean, that's the kind of song that you cry every time you hear it. There's no choice. It doesn't give you any choice. It's like the end of Charlie Chaplin's City Lights. Like you have to cry. Or there's no other possibility. That's the same level of of emotion.
Charlie Chaplin was a good musician too, right?
Charlie Chaplin was like one of the most amazing geniuses to ever have walked the face of earth. I mean, he was probably a pretty difficult man, but that guy was a great musician, fantastic melodist, wrote some incredible songs. That song is actually in an album that I did with François Moutin and Harry Honig. There's a name Pierre Moutin Honig. It's called Freedom and Motema. And the last song of this CD is Smile. Harry plays the melody on the drums. That's a Charlie Chaplin song too. It's Limelight. Or you have the one in The Kid, Cannot really exactly remember it. Though he wrote some great stuff, and he was, of course, the director and producer and actor that we all know. That's the dancer, mime. That guy was. I don't know.
Well, in that era,
What a brain.
you had to, I've interviewed Randy Weston, and he said, back in my early days, you weren't just a musician. You had to be able to dance, and you had to be able to wait tables. You had to do all these things.
Yeah,
And
of
in
course,
the cabaret
of course.
days
Yeah.
or the vaudeville days,
Yeah.
maybe you had to know some magic tricks.
Yeah, you had to pay your dues, and in a way that you had to be a normal human being. Somebody who does things.
Right, not so specific.
I mean, in my case, I wouldn't say I've been very active at waiting tables and doing vaudeville and dancing, because I'm pretty bad at it. But I have worked in an office for like 4 days. That's a big Freudian slip. 4 years. When I was in my early 20s, I was a rocket scientist. That's how they call it. I was a good man. I was good at math. I was good at my studies. So I did scientific study. I don't boast about it as much as some of my colleagues, but I've done that, and I think it's great. It's great that I have done something that's different.
Right.
I know life, can be something else. Sometimes I see some young musicians, they have no idea what it is not to be a musician, They're just carrying their guitar in Brooklyn and going to sessions with like headphones and big, they look like they've never been in the real world ever. And I don't think that's very good for them and for the music. I think it's good. It's good to have different experiences. It's good to know that, some people spend their life not making music. They do something else, and it's great.
Right.
I when I was in my rocket scientist days, I was a pretty bad rocket scientist because I was already obsessed by music and not getting enough sleep to work in an office at day. But I saw some guys who were really passionate about their job, and it was, to me, it's the same level of passion, as music or anything else. So now I'm like, when some people say, "Oh, you're lucky to be a musician," I'm like, no. I'm just a musician. Lucky. Everybody's lucky. I mean, not everybody's lucky, obviously, on this planet. But it's not because you do an artistic job that you're lucky. Some musicians have been and still are miserable.
Right.
Some commit suicide. Some kill themselves with drugs. You know, you can go more desperate than that. You know, so no, it's not. It's just passion. Passion can be very dark too. You know, that's something that people tend to forget, and you know, it's very, very politically incorrect to talk about darkness these days. But you know, there was a dark side to passion. So every passion has its fantastic side and its less fantastic side. Charlie Chaplin was a notoriously unhappy person.
Mm.
You like, this guy should have been happy. He was like the best in so many. No, that guy he was a pain. He was miserable. He made many people miserable. You know, including some of his kids. And he was a difficult person. It was not easy for him to be who he was.
Right.
Not that I'm like crying on his destiny, but I'm like, yeah, you know, it's not luck. He was who he was. Period. You know.
Well, maybe that's just how the universe has to work, right? This balance of dark and light. Because they say a lot of these depression might serve a role because it makes people really prolific. You know.
I mean, it's very, very. It's very. I think there's no rule. Like, the only rule I say in art is that there's no rule. There are some people who are very sunny people. You know, you see the difference, for example, between Arthur Rubinstein and Vladimir Horowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably two of the greatest pianists of all time, and two friends, colleagues, and competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And Rubinstein was as sunny and gay as Horowitz was dark and depressed and difficult, you know, and they just had completely different personalities. I mean, and when you hear them playing, I guess you could say that you hear their personalities through the music, but it's an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Some notoriously sunny people wrote some very dark stuff, and vice versa, you know. Stan Getz sounds like an angel, and I know that in real life he was not. You know, I mean, it's strange. I don't know what comes through music. It's still a mystery to me. Another one of those mysteries that I don't want to solve. You know.
Right. Well, yeah. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. It's been
a great
really
pleasure.
wonderful.
If you want, I can play a last tune. And
yeah. Let's finish off with something. Whatever you're feeling.
Oh man. So I'll do another improvisation like at the beginning.
Yeah. Why not? We are in the home of Jean-Michel Pilc. This is the Musician Show. My name is David Ellenbogen. Many thanks. This was so much fun.
Oh, thank you. That was lots of fun for me too.
And he's always playing around town. He's got many CDs available in the places where people buy and download.
Yeah, just mentioning my website, which is very easy to remember, jeanmichelpilc.com, JeanMichelPilc, like my name. And or you can Google my name, like that's what you say those days. Google me,
yes.
Jean-Michel Pilc, and you'll find my website. And I have quite a few dates in New York City and different places. So I was an excellent musician. I try to play only with excellent musicians. I always try to be the weakest member of the band. So I hope to see you guys soon. It's been a great pleasure for me to do this show. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for listening.